Ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, and welcome to a series of interviews with artists and companies who'll be appearing at LiF 2024. These conversations are about their experiences, influences, recommendations, and we hope capture insight into folk about their work and their passion for improv. A big thank you to Conrad Toft and Simone Ellul from Pairentheses, who'll be performing at LiF with Shades of Emotion. Their show starts at 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, the 20th of April at the Unity Theatre. Tickets are £7 or £6 for Creative Pool members and can be purchased online at www.unitytheatre.co.uk. You can check out their show and the rest of the festival lineup at www.liverpoolimprovfestival.com. You can follow the festival on our various social media channels, which are on the website. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, hello, welcome. How are you?
Good.
We're good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we briefly caught up before this recording. So we're going to kick off with a few questions that I sent through to you. One which always taxes the memory or not, depending on what you viewed, was your first improv memory moment show. For some it was participatory, for some it was an experience of watching and then joining. What were your experiences that kind of led you to this great art form?
Well, for me, I think it was doing theatre school as a kid, going to a Saturday theatre school, and one of the things that they used was improv. And yeah, I was doing that for years as part of the drama process. And then a huge break, and I did a piece of Commedia dell'arte with some people here in Brussels. And one of those people, Ryan Miller, is someone who does improv. He's been doing it for a long time in Chicago, and now he's in Amsterdam. And he said, oh, we could do an improv workshop. So I did an improv workshop, and it just started all over again and started me on a journey back into it. So a couple of different memories of where it's slipped in for me.
It's actually very, very similar for me as well. I remember doing an improv class in my drama school, which wasn't like I now know improv. It was just sort of do a scene without talking about anything at all. But my first memory, like proper improv, if you like, is very similar to Conrad's, actually. I did a weekend workshop with Ryan Miller here in Brussels. And I remember so vividly, we had a weekend workshop and then a show, or possibly a show even on the Saturday. So I don't remember properly, but I do remember walking out on stage. And as I'm walking out on stage, I'm like, this is insane. I don't know what I'm about to do. I have no script because I come from scripted theatre. This was a moment of insanity for me. And I was terrified, whereas I never suffer from stage fright with a scripted show. And suddenly I'm just walking out in front of an audience and I don't know what's about to happen. And that was terrifying and very, very exciting at the same time. And yeah, that was it. I was hooked.
I think that's the big difference between doing scripted theatre and doing improv, is the excitement of going out on stage every night. And for me, I kind of have the opposite. When I'm doing scripted theatre, I have more fear going out on stage because I know if something goes wrong, I've got to get it back onto that track somehow. Whereas with improv, I'm not worried if I've got good scene partners on stage, and with Simone, always great scene partner on stage. I know whatever happens, it's going to be great and it will go somewhere. It might not be where I expect it, but it'll be fun.
And it's the same for me. I just finished doing like a play, The Father. There's been a film as well with Olivia Colman. And walking out on stage for that, I was terrified, but in a completely different way, that I was not going to do it properly. In the sense that I was like, I'm going to screw this up, you know? I was so convinced, and I did dry one night, and I was okay. This is not improv talk, but I'm gonna mention it. So I wasn't great with my lines. I was really struggling to learn them, but I did, and I was fine. And then one of the nights, I was laying the table. You know, we had forks and knives and props and stuff, and I said my paragraph, and I knew I could picture it in the script as a paragraph, and I knew I had an extra line. And I couldn't for the life of me. So I hyper-focused the cutlery, just adjusting it like minimal details. And my scene partner was reading newspaper, and he's like, Elise, which was the cue to my next line. I was like, oh, thank God you're there, because I was not. Yeah, you can't improvise. I mean, you can improvise a tiny, tiny bit, but you need to know what you're doing in scripted shows. So yeah.
So it's interesting that you both kind of have the same person who kind of led you to either discovery or rediscovery. It's interesting how many conversations I've had with folk where there is that person in a particular place or location that almost is like the honeypot, and everyone eventually arrives there, has an experience, and then that sort of that idea of the pebble and the ripples, it kind of that experience is then taken somewhere else, which I hadn't really, it would be quite an interesting mapping exercise to kind of go, who are those people that have, and where those spheres of influence kind of cross over as you, and from coming from Chicago to then coming to Brussels, and then where it then springs into Amsterdam, and that sort of what's the Kevin Bacon thing?
Oh, 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, so it was like in stereo. So, but
I have to say, Ryan really did have a huge effect on it. I don't think we would be here if it weren't for Ryan. So, real shout out to Ryan for making this happen, because there was nothing, as far as I know. You started slightly before me.
I organised that workshop that was in Brussels because I directed Ryan in a play, and he just had such energy on stage. And because it was based around commedia dell'arte, it was Accidental Death of an Anarchist. So not exactly commedia dell'arte, but I met him through a workshop that he was on as well, doing that. Then I drew him in to do the play. And then when we were doing that, he said, oh yeah, I do this improv and it'd be great to do a workshop. So we got him in to do that. And then he did a series of them, and you were at a different one.
Yeah.
But it really was just the right person in the right time to get that whole thing running. And then the Ghost Sheep started, which is the troupe we were both part of for many years. Died as part of the COVID callback.
COVID killed. Ghost Sheep. But I do think that everyone goes on a kind of an improv journey, and through the journey, I think there are different mentors, like different stops along the way where you meet someone that's like, oh, this is what I need now. This is the person that I need to teach me in this point, and then
Yeah. No, so one of the reasons for the festival was post-pandemic. There were quite a few teams in Liverpool, and only less than 2 or 3 survived as a result. Lots of people went home or left the city, and it just gradually, the whole sort of scene sort of was slightly tired and sad, really. So one of the things was to kind of go, okay, how do we compete in a city that has sort of per head of population more theatres than London, but is predominantly putting on theatre, so there's very little space. There's lots of performance going on in bars and this, that, and the other, but where does improv fit within that? So it's fighting its corner almost, and so that kind of I know we spoke beforehand of kind of how and why, but that was one of the other reasons was post-pandemic there was a I felt a need, and I've always felt that I love improv, and I love seeing improv in bars and various things, but I always think improv, not to make it legitimate as such, but I always feel that the additional production value takes improv to a whole new level when it's in a theatre and under lights. And it's not because it's formal, it's just because it just so happens to have those tools, those additional theatrical tools on hand. So I'm a big believer in sort of kind of going, okay, it can sit cheap by jowl because it is theatre. It just so happens to be spontaneous theatre.
And I think there are still audiences who think that improv is a poorer version of scripted theatre, which it absolutely is not. And nor are we trying to look like scripted theatre, because in that case, then go watch a scripted show. But having those theatrical elements, as you're saying, having the lights, the sound, doing it in a real theatre or in a more traditional theatre setting, I think it gives so much more value to the work we do on stage.
I think in many ways it's more accessible as well than scripted theatre for people who haven't been brought up in a culture of scripted theatre to, you know, find improv through going to a bar where it's on and a simple show and then going on and seeing more can be amazing and bringing people in. And coming back to the whole post-pandemic thing and with the Ghost Sheep as was sort of dying off during that period, for me what was interesting is the Ghost Sheep died off as a result of improv becoming more popular in Brussels as well. So some people were being pulled off into other projects, other people, their lives were moving on in different directions. But when you've built up together as a troupe and other troupes are beginning, because people are beginning to teach improv around Brussels, you know, to schools that have been putting a lot of people through, and they are all creating their own troupes. You can't just walk in to a troupe where people have trained together. It's very hard. So you end up in a situation where, okay, the troupe's had its day and it's finished. But when you have all these people who are still growing, they're not ready to bring other people in. And that's why it's really nice that Simone and I still get the chance to do a few things together in different formats and with a few other people who were in the Ghost Sheep, but also people we've met along the journey. Who were guesting with us as Ghost Sheep, and then they've gone on to other things. And it keeps it alive as well to do very different sets of people.
And to be fair, like you and I on stage, even within the Ghost Sheep, we're still the most interesting thing.
You can't quote us on that.
No.
But we had some wonderful little scenes.
Yeah, within our long format,
which kept us going, I think.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to keep that on stage relationship working, because there was a richness there.
Yeah.
And so,
well, we'll find out in Liverpool.
Yeah, and we're really looking forward to seeing Shades of Emotion. I was interested you kind of talk about Commedia and the idea of Dario Fo. I was touring in Rotterdam and we had a night off and we saw Dario Fo do his one-man show.
Oh,
wow.
Managed to get tickets for that. But then I really got into kind of the whole thing around Gramolo, because I was working for a Spanish clown company and they used the version of Gramolo. So it was like guttural sounds which translate in terms of a language. And I'm kind of interested, have you seen anything that's like that in terms of improv, where it is kind of a version of Gramolo so it can cross boundaries in terms of language? Or it just popped into my head.
I mean, just like gibberish, really.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen gibberish type things. I have seen one which was not language based. I'm trying to remember which festival it was years ago.
I'm just gonna pop in with one thing, that I am part of a troupe that's made up of members from different Mediterranean countries. We're called Sabir. What we do is everybody has to speak in their own language. So, and we don't all understand each other. So we still do scenes, we still bring a show to life, but we're not necessarily understanding each other on a verbal level. And we're forced to kind of use other
and for your
ways.
Audience as well.
Yeah.
Each member of the audience is having a different experience, because maybe one of them understands Maltese, a different one understands Italian. Some of them will understand both.
Yeah.
So that can be a really interesting and different experience. So you can have two people sitting next to each other watching a different show.
Yeah.
Wow. That sounds like a show I need to catch. Have you got any clips or YouTube things that you could send through, or have you recorded anything that you could share?
I can't remember. Oh my God, they came to Malta in September as part of Improvinza, the festival there. I cannot remember if we filmed it. I suspect we have, but I need to check.
No, I'd just be fascinated, because it literally just popped in my head and kind of going, oh, okay, we made a whole theatre show with Gramolo and a whole series of clown bits that kind of went through. I just wondered if someone had or was, you know, as always, there are no new ideas. But I was thinking, but that's a really interesting idea. I really like that as an idea. Although, you know, in the troupe that I work with at the moment, we've got someone who's Japanese, we've got someone who's Norwegian, and Irish Gaelic. So that would be that would be really interesting to kind of make.
We have done kind of little short form in the Ghost Sheep. We've done some short form games, you know, like the dubbing games.
Yeah.
And myself and David, one of the other troupe members who's Irish, he would speak Gaelic and me Maltese. And then the people watching wouldn't understand, and we wouldn't understand each other. So yeah, it's well, I'm not great at doing gibberish, so I prefer to speak a real language.
Maltese is gibberish.
Yeah, it's gibberish to everyone else. So yeah.
No, that's really interesting. Okay, cool. So, cast your minds, if you could, to a moment where you've gone, oh my God, this is amazing. This is like magic happening in front of my very eyes. So it could be either as you as viewer, or it could be you as your scene partner. You know, a moment where you just went, it felt like the improv gods were just guiding us, and we were just this vessel that was kind of happening.
So many moments. I'm thinking of one that I was on stage for, but was really odd. I don't know.
We did one once where one of the three gifts, where we had a moment where the other troupe members became kind of like almost Laura yeah, she has a similar format. It wasn't that. It just happened that they decided to be kind of ghosty and push us towards each other.
Oh, yeah.
That was a beautiful moment where these two characters were brought together thanks to the ghosts of the previous characters, kind of thing. So that was a really nice moment. I have as audience, I have seen at least two shows that so the very first time I watched Patty on stage, Patty Styles, she was doing a mono scene with someone called Ruth, I believe. And I was fascinated. It must have been either the first time I watched a mono scene. It was during a festival in Rome. And I was just completely mesmerized by the way they built the story out of nothing, just taking little strings and weaving a beautiful story that by the end of it, and it must have been a 45-minute piece, it was there, you know. And obviously now that I've worked with Patty, I've been taught by Patty, and of course Keith Johnstone's teachings and what have you. It is all about building the platform in those first few minutes and then opening up and up and up. But it was so beautiful. I was just completely enchanted by it. And another one in Athens with Joe Bill and Jill Bernard. They played a duo show that I think they do. But it was so remarkable in that they had very specific and weird characters, but also they kept repeating things, which I thought for an improv show, that is exceptional. There was so much happening, and then they just either go back or just repeat the same words. So I came to the door, I rang the doorbell, and you came, and then you opened the door and you let me in, and repeating that over and over. It was, that was one for me, one of the most wow moments.
Make me think of a Joe Bill one I saw at Improv Fest Island. I think you were there as well a couple of years ago, where they were fishing.
Oh yes.
It was just beautiful. Nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it was mesmerizing. It's just two guys shooting the breeze, fishing. And it was lovely. It was so real. And it just drew your attention and kept it. And it wasn't, we'd had a lot of things on stage that night. I think there were a lot of movement, a lot of motion, a lot of people trying very hard. And then to see two people just effortlessly keep everyone's attention was wonderful. On a more negative front, in terms of magic moments that happen in a bad way. Going back to another festival, Ellul Festival, whatever that's called. The Athens one, Mantle. First time I went there, we were there with the Ghost Sheep, and we had a where we start with a picture of some kind, and we have 3 different pictures that the audience can choose between, and they chose a tapestry.
This was 2016.
Yes, but this is the issue. We predicted Brexit, and it was really unfortunate.
And Trump.
And then we had a later one where we then predicted Trump, but it was just from this tapestry of future history. But we shouldn't really give the spoilers as to where it ended up, because it gets a lot darker than just Brexit on its own. But these are moments that we have these two shows, and it got to the stage where we were talking about shows in the future. We were just like, whatever you do when it's coming up to 2020, don't mention Trump, because we don't want him to get re-elected again. It was almost as if we caused it.
With the fortune teller, we had something weird as well.
It was we had a show called The Fortune Teller, where we have a member of the audience who comes on, and we have someone acting as a fortune teller, kind of dragging information out about their life, and then we show them their future. And so we had this one where we talk about this. It was set at a bicycle shop, and then there was a couple, and they were having a baby, and he didn't know they were having a baby, and then that was basically the future of the show in 3 sets. And then afterwards, he found out that yes, indeed, his girlfriend was pregnant, and he didn't know, and nor did we. So,
and he thought it was a big elaborate setup by his girlfriend to reveal. It's like you two and like Nostradamus or something.
It's very scary.
You need Conrad and Simone's predictions of 2024. That'll make a fortune.
Only good things.
They kind of they stick octopuses in tanks with numbers.
Yes. Wasn't it the World Cup or something? There was the octopus ball or something.
Yeah. So that they just need to come to Brussels and grab you two. Okay, that's brilliant. Wow. Well, I've viewed many times and just go, oh wow, you just see a moment of magic or connection which someone wasn't expecting on stage, and it transmits something which is, I think, seldom. There are very good theatre shows, but the problem I've found with theatre over the years is, how do you recreate that moment that you found in rehearsals and keep recreating it? And there's loads of people have written loads of books on that very subject, but I kind of think, well, the thing that all Meisner and all these kind of people with particular training, actor training, is like trying to find that moment of spontaneity and instinct and all of that. And you kind of go, there's an art form that does that, and it's not really given the value, I think. In lots of, people kind of use, in conservatoires around the world, they use it in lots of different ways, but I kind of go, look, just train them to be improv players and get them to do a play. I've never seen a conservatoire do, I've seen them train to do scripts and do, you're training the voice, this and that and the other. I've never seen a conservatoire do a full, right, we're going to train our students and they're going to make up a brand new theatre show, which is just improvised. I think that would be a brilliant thing for a drama school or something to do.
I'm going to confess to something here. Having come from scripted theatre, having done my MFA in staging, Shakespeare specifically, and having this massive scripted background, I was one of the people who was thinking, yeah, improv is fine, it's fun, but it's nothing, it's not serious theatre. It's not theatre. It's not. I'm a real actor. And then the more improv I started doing, the more I started appreciating it. And nowadays, I really do feel that improv is such an incredible art form and performing art in its own right. And this is what I'm trying to do, at least in Malta, trying to convince everybody, no, you have to watch improv, not just the comic stuff, not just the short form. There's so much more. And yes, it's fun to go for a night, and people do enjoy the sort of jokey things. But oh my God, when you watch a dramatic improv or a long form improv that works, wow, it's priceless.
So
the short form is the gateway drug to get people into long form.
That's exact analogy I use. I kind of teach short form and then kind of go, now come and have a look at this. Do you want some proper hardcore improv? And then people are hooked. So I'm working with a troupe who are all relatively new to improv, don't really have a performance background, and they're all post 60. And so I've got them into Pinter. So we're creating, there was a really famous TV show called The Royal Family in this country, written by Carol Ahern, which is just people sat around chewing the fat. but with lots of space. So we're kind of comparing. It's a bit like Pinter meets the royal family, but it's set in a funeral wake. So we will stage. Um, so we will stage the obituary of an audience member. So it can be real or it can be made up. So you get all the key information about who this person is, um, and then they. And I've always wanted to make an improv show where you can drink beer and eat sandwiches on stage. So that's what we're doing. So, but the thing I've learned about it is that actually silence and subtext, which we kind of really play to an almost unbearable length where it's so uncomfortable and it's just broken and it just releases so much laughter as a result from that. So I think you're right, Simone. It's kind of the idea that it can do lots of different things. And I think at the moment, people are being really brave and trying out loads of really exciting stuff. You know, like Shades of Emotion, I was like, what a great starting point to then go and explore. So I very neatly segued.
Very neatly done, yeah.
What might an audience in Liverpool expect when you bring Shades of Emotion? Because it was the one where I kind of went, oh my God, this sounds amazing. And I'm really curious to see. It was the beginning bit which I was kind of going, oh, I can see how, and I don't know what the show is, but I was like, I can see how that could really, in my head, work brilliantly.
For me, I think you're going to get something grounded, because it's, what does that emotion kick off with us as players on the stage, which will then take us into the improv. And also the shades part is, when we play together, we go everywhere from really zany, weird comedy stuff all the way to very serious, dramatic moments. And we were rehearsing recently when my wife walked in, and we were just doing this breakup scene, and it was just the tension. And she looked and it was like, okay, this isn't a good moment to come in. I'm going, no, this is great. You've just stopped us a good time. But the fact that when we start a scene, we don't know which direction it's going to go between those, and it so often flows even between those as well.
Yeah. Also because we have this kind of sense of humor that really works together.
Very dry.
Yeah. So I love doing the grounded scenes, but not only those. And this is an opportunity to really try anything. Yeah, there could be anything. We can't.
We have no idea.
We have no idea is the answer to that. But we do like talking about ourselves, so that's why we're going to start with taking an emotion and then seeing what it triggers in us, what memories or what stories we can tell, and then those will be our inspiration. Well, everything, the emotion itself, the colors, the stories, everything's an inspiration for us, and we'll just hopefully keep going.
Roll with it.
Yeah.
That just reminded me. I always start with students and with a poster of a variety of different shapes of bread. And if you want to start shapes of bread, like bread rolls, and if you want to start an argument with students from various parts of the country, ask them what that is called.
Yeah.
Because every type of bread is called something different from where they are from. And they absolutely passionately will defend a bread roll. It is just remarkable. But what triggers something in them bizarrely becomes, oh, you call that the same from where I'm from. And they're almost like, oh, we are aligned somehow tribally. And then if they disagree with you, it is almost with utter rage and anger that they will kind of, you're an idiot. Why would you call it that? So the idea of being triggered by something or a memory or a thing like that is because it's quite primal and immediately gives you a whole well of stuff to draw from. That's really interesting. Really, really interesting. Well, I have to say, I'm very excited to see you guys. I watched your submission, little tiny film bit, and I was just like, oh my God, these two are ace. in regards to what you read, how do you consume? Do you go do workshops, or is there any books that you kind of? I know you mentioned Patty, who's had a book out in the past couple of years. What's your go-to if you're kind of wanting to remind yourself about improv, going back to basics and stuff? What's your go-to book or podcast or
For
film
me,
for you?
I mean, there's so many books, and more books are coming out, and I honestly wanna shout out to everyone, but I can't. Patty, yes, Patty has improvised freely, I believe. Great, yeah. I can't praise all of them but they do deserve it. Like Mark Jane, for example, who's based in Paris. He's got also a book out fairly recently. I know Dave Rosowski recently published a book. But I have to be honest, like my go-to book, the book that I go back to remind me about what improv, or rather impro is.
Oh, okay,
is
I know where you're going.
Steve Johnstone's Improv. That's for me the first book on improv I ever wrote. Improv I ever read, and it's all there. And I have to be honest, because I read that book when I was doing my MFA, and I hadn't quite ventured into the world of improv, and I understood maybe 50% of it. Like when he was describing theatre sports, I had no idea what he was talking about. Like, what do you mean? What? How can you do theatre as a sport? And a lot of the stuff in there, I was like, I can't understand any of this, but I'll use the games. And then as time went by, and then when I started doing improv myself, it's like, oh my God, I get it now. But for me, it's absolutely the basic. I mean, it's not the only. It's just because I happen to be more in that direction, because there are lots of schools of improv and different styles, and I think they're all equally valid and they're all great. It's just that I happen to. I even went to Loose Moose in Calgary, and I trained there for their 2-week program, and for me that's close to my heart. But there's so much out there. There's Katie Shute, for example, has a great handbook on long form improv. Oh, so much, and I'm sure I'm forgetting people who are going to get offended, but yeah, not intentional.
For me, it's funny, in many parts of my life I read. I read ferociously, 70, 80 books a year, and I can say that because I know every single book I read. I'm very boring, but improv is just not one of those things I read. I watch and I experience. So for me, seeing shows and taking part in workshops, I learn so much more. And I'm a fierce critic of everything, but in a very good way, because when I'm seeing things that work, I'm wanting to take those things on and understand why. When I see things that don't work, I'm trying to understand why didn't that work and what twist does it need. Or I see something that's amazing on stage, and I'm going, okay, how could you turn that to have something else equally great but very different? And yeah, I mean, you've got all kinds of books sitting on your shelf as well. But yeah, I think the only one I've read in the last 10 years is probably Ryan's Take It Easy.
Yeah. Ryan Miller also wrote the book. Yeah. We keep mentioning. Hi, Ryan. I do have to say, because Conrad mentioned workshops, I really believe in the importance of taking workshops. Even if you've been doing this for 20 years, doesn't matter. Go into a class, because you will always learn. And to be fair, COVID, with all the problems it brought, it gave us such an opportunity. I was doing online improv, but that's basically all I did for a year, because I was taking classes with all kinds of people. I was doing online shows and online practices, and it was amazing. It connected me to so many people from all over the world who I would never have met if it weren't for, ironically, something that kept me at home.
So you could just do it from the comfort of wearing top half t-shirt, bottom half pajamas, which was most of my COVID was spent.
You can do that on stage as well. It's not an issue. Everyone needs a uniform.
Pajamas, we can use that.
It was like it became that running. It was sort of that running gag where you had the person with their shirt and tie and things, and then they get up and they've just got like shorts on or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys. So if I was to kind of go, okay, Conrad and Simone are going to be the curators of 2025 for LiF in Liverpool, and money was no object, and you were to go into being, I don't know, 2 or 3 companies that you've either seen or practitioners you've seen, teachers, who would they be? Who would you go, oh my God, you've got to have these are amazing? See, this is the first time you're stumped.
This is impossible because I could start mentioning people and never stop. Because I mean, I've met again online, like people like David Escobedo, who's based in the UK, not very far, I think, who's a wonderful human being, and I really want to take classes with him, for example. I will shout out to Carla Dingle in Charlotte, North Carolina. She works with Queen City Comedy. She's done so much. I mean, her and the whole team, of course, at Queen City Comedy, they've done so much. Even during the pandemic, they've created troops. We're still performing together, and I've met her in person, and she's a wonderful human being. She's an amazing teacher who focuses very much on grounded improv, on acting for improv, on intimate scenes. She's got a really wonderful spectrum of stuff. So I would absolutely recommend her as one of the people, but that's one of many, many, many.
Yeah, I'm less useful there. I'm not sure. J Star.
J Star.
Who I haven't seen for years. Who was one of the people I saw quite early on in Brussels. Who is based in the US somewhere.
Yeah, US, but where I can't remember.
There are
and he
people
gave
I've seen on the way.
us a format, hasn't he?
Yeah, we had great fun with him. But what I think I would do, I'm gonna twist your concept. You've said money's no object, but I'm going to put on a show. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to take 8 people where people would recognize their faces. So I'm going to take them from all walks of life, but I'm going to do like the Love Island or something like that, where I'm just going to take these people, I'm going to put them in to a room for a week. We're going to take them through the basics of improv, and by the end of that week, they're going to perform an amazing show, and everyone will forget where they knew them from. They will remember them from that point onwards, from the show they see them in. There we go.
I think you've got an idea there. You've got something there.
Cost a lot.
So there we go. We kind of go next
Funding.
year. We need to find out funding to bring a load of people to have a week in a room and come out and produce something. We do not know what it's called. And that's the show. We do not know what it's called, and there we go. I'd love to do that. I have to play. I have to put that on the lottery for this week. See if I can win the Euro. Talking finally, our last question, was really poorly putting it round to. What are your dreams for improv in Europe? And I consider our Britain European, even though we are not. It had nothing to do with me. It's just like, oh yes, we've I think improv Europe. What do you see? Where would you like to see it? What's your dream in the next 10 years?
I would love to see a touring festival where it starts in one city and it goes all the way to all the European capitals, and it picks up and drops off improvisers on the way. So you have a core group that's changing as it goes city by city, and it will go for months. But I could really imagine having everybody linking in with each other. And I think it sounds crazy and it sounds impractical, but something like that could work.
Like Lollapalooza used to be, where it kind of picks up and goes from one thing, but you take a crowd from one. Bit like that old punk ethos where we come and promote you, we bring your local, away you go. I like that. That's another Euro. That's another
Euro millions.
That's another 10 Euro millions spent. Okay, where else are we putting money for this?
I want to see more connection between European improvisers and improv in general. I think there's like little bubbles. And I think it's a little bit difficult for the bubbles to merge together and to do more stuff together. So, and also this very insulated kind of, this country does this and this part of the country does this. And I think we can do more. We can spread like an oil spill.
Okay.
Nice positive image there, thank you.
To pull you to all of Europe.
You're proposing that improv is going to be an environmental disaster. Yeah.
And let's look at this a different way of spreading the seeds of flowers as they spread across Europe.
You want to spread your seed all over Europe, Conrad?
Whilst you rub oil on him. Yeah.
His wife is in the other room, I have to say.
And all the poor seagulls are just like, covered whilst having flowers growing out of their head.
On downhill fast.
I will tell you a story about an oil-covered bird over a drink, though not over Zoom.
Okay. Yes. Well, I very much look forward to being able to welcome you to Liverpool and to the Unity, and to just come and experience Liverpool. It's a very, I don't know if either of you've been.
I've never been.
I haven't been for many, many years, but I'm from Manchester, so
okay.
It's interesting to see how Liverpool's changed since I was last there. It's probably 40 years. Yeah,
well, I came to Liverpool in 1993, and it's unrecognisable now. Unfortunately and unfortunately, developers came in and have done some ghastly things, but at the same time, we've had some amazing things as well. So you kind of, it's halfy. But yeah, it's got, what it hasn't lost is its vibrancy. In terms of how people interact and stuff. It reminds me of a sort of slightly calmer version of New York. Everyone will kind of, don't be offended. People are quite blunt, but they don't mean it in a rude way. It's just they're just keen. They just like kind of, who are you? What are you doing here? And it's not in an aggressive way. They're kind of just going, oh, why are you in Liverpool, basically? So in a really nice way, it's got a vibrancy, which is, other than New York, I don't really experience it, and a friendliness, don't really experience it anywhere else.
Sounds good.
Right. Well,